USB, USB. USB, or Universal Serial Bus, is the de facto standard by which we plug stuff into our computers. I don't care if it's a camera or if it's a mouse or a keyboard, odds are good if you have any of these devices, you're probably going to be using USB. USB has some amazing benefits to it. We can usually take a USB device, plug it into our system, and it just works most of the time, and it really makes our lives very convenient. Now, in this episode, what I want to do is talk about the different USB standards that are out there. USB's been around for quite a while, and a number of different standards have come along, and it's important for you and for the exam that you're comfortable with those standards. So let's start off by going through all the different USB standards. USB 1.1 came out in two different speeds. It would either run at 1.5 megabits per second or 12 megabits per second. Now, in today's world, that seems so incredibly slow, but back then, that was pretty quick. And then on top of that, even in today's world, there's still plenty of devices that run at these speeds. Think about a keyboard or a mouse. I don't care how fast you type, you're never going to be able to go faster than 12 megabits per second, I promise. Now, these standards lasted for quite a while, but they were eventually superseded with USB 2.0. USB 2.0 runs at 480 megabits per second. So it was a big speed leap, and it really helped to bring in things like USB thumb drives and such, where they were actually fast enough where you could pull files off of them. Now, these ran for quite a while until we came into USB 3.0. The USB 3.0 standard ran at a blistering 5 gigabits per second, but USB 3.0 had a lot of compatibility issues, and in fact, I still have a beautiful motherboard I own that is USB 3.0 that simply can't boot Windows. It was just issues with hardware. So they quickly updated the standard and came up with USB 3.1, which is what we use on most systems today. USB 3.1 comes in two different speeds. Generation 1 was basically just the fix for USB 3.0, and it ran at 5 gigabits per second. And then USB 3.1 Generation 2 runs at our current top speed of 10 gigabits per second. Now, I cannot stress enough how important these speeds are for the exam. So what I want to do is let me just put up a little chart here, and what I need you to do is memorize this chart. Go ahead and pause it, do whatever you need to do, but memorize this chart, okay? Here you go. So you got all those speeds memorized? Fantastic, because you're going to see it on the exam. Now, obviously, USB is a type of connectivity, so we have a lot of different type of physical connectors. So what I want to do right now is go through the most common types of USB connectors. Now, when we talk about USB connectors, you'll hear the term USB A connector and USB B connector. Now, at this point in time, I'm going to save a big discussion of what A and B means, because it's really kind of cool if you understand how it works. But for right now, all I want you to do is take a look at these different types of connectors and make sure you can recognize them. If, for example, you were to take a certification exam and somebody showed you a picture, you would say things like, oh, that's a USB Mini B connector. Got the idea? So let's march through all these different connectors I have right here. So we're going to start off right here. This is the famous original USB A connector. This connector is the first type of connector we saw with USB, and this is what we call the A connector. They're still incredibly popular today. Along with this type of connector was this guy right here. This is a USB B connector. USB B connectors, I'll give away a little bit from other episodes. This is where we plug into the computer, and this is where we plug into different type of devices like scanners or something like that. So these two types of connectors were very popular for a long time, but one of the problems we ran into with USB is that smaller and smaller devices wanted to take advantage of it, and these large connectors were not exactly perfect for a lot of situations. Cameras, smart devices, things like that. So we began to start seeing connectors like these. So right here, that is a USB Mini B connector. We'd see this a lot of times. People were plugged into their cameras or video recorders, stuff like that. We'd see these types of connectors. I have a scanner I use at home every day that has a connector just like that. Next is right here. This is a USB micro B connector. Micro B connectors are incredibly popular. If you own an Android device, odds are good you are not only familiar with this type of connector, but you have lots and lots of these cables in your car and in your house and all that kind of stuff. So the Mini and the Micro Bs are very, very popular. This one right here next to it on the orange, this is a USB 3 micro connector. So the problem we have with USB 3 is that it's so much faster than the other types of USB that it had to have its own proprietary type connector. What's actually interesting, if you look very carefully, you'll see this larger part of the USB 3 micro connector is exactly compatible with this. So I could actually, if I had a USB 3 micro port to plug it in, I could take that regular USB micro connector and plug right into it. It's backward compatibility. Now, all these connectors were great. We've used them for years and years, but it wasn't that long ago people were starting to get frustrated, particularly with that old school USB-A connector, because you always try to put it in backwards. And you all know what I'm talking about because everybody watching this has done that, where you can't plug it in, you got to look at it, and then you finally plug it in right. That changed a couple years ago with the advent of USB-C, and that's this guy right here. The big benefit of USB-C is not only is it capable of handling extremely high-speed data throughput, but more importantly, it no longer can only go in one way. You can plug it in either way and it works perfectly well. The challenge we run into with USB is that we have all these different speeds. So if you were to take your USB thumb drive and plug it into a USB 1.1 port, it would work, but it would run incredibly slow. So we want people to have some methodology to look at the different types of ports on the back of their computers or in the front, whatever it might be, and to be able to recognize that one port might be USB 1.1 compatible, another port might be USB 3.1 Gen 2 compatible. And what the industry has tried to do, and by the way, this is not universal, it's not a law of physics, but they try pretty hard, is they put different colors on the different ports. So let's go through all of these different colors. So first, if you ever see a USB port or a connector with a little bit of a white tab in here, in this particular example I'm using USB-A, that is probably going to be a USB 1.1 compatible port or connector. If you see one that's black, like this one right here, that's going to be USB 2.0 compatible. Now, if you see a blue one, now notice this is a nice kind of a neutral blue here, that's either going to be USB 3.0 or USB 3.1, probably USB 3.1 Gen 1. If you see a pretty teal connector like this, you can pretty much be guaranteed that that's going to be USB 3.1. And last, if you see a connector that's going to be or red, or in this case I'm showing red, but it could be orange or even yellow, those are kind of unique. Those are what we call charging ports. A lot of people want to plug into a USB simply because they want to charge their smartphone or something like that. And what we've developed over the years is that for a lot of systems, like for example, if I have a desktop, if I turn the desktop off, it's not charging anything. So these specialized ports basically mean if the system is plugged in, it's working. There are exceptions to this, so you can't treat it as a law of physics. But if you see these types of colors, what we're talking about is a charging port. Now, in this example that I just showed you here, we're talking about USB-A connectors. That's usually where you're going to be seeing this stuff, particularly if you're looking on the back of a system. But do keep in mind is that even on other types of connectors, like a micro USB 3.0 B connector, you'll often see these colors as well. Now, the important thing to remember with USB is that it has good backward compatibility. If you have a USB 3.1 thumb drive and you plug it into a USB 2.0 port, it will work, but it's only going to run at the speed of that port. So that's where the colors really become handy, because it allows you to look at whatever your device is and plug it into the right speed for your kind of device. Okay, so for the exam, number one, please make sure you memorize all of the different speeds for USB and the different versions for those speeds. Also, make sure that you can recognize the ports that we've shown you in this episode. And then third, be comfortable with the different types of colors. Maybe not so much because you're going to see it on the exam, but more importantly, in the real world, it's critical that we make sure that we plug the right speed of device into the right speed USB port.